You're having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you very much in advance for hitting that like button, the thumbs up, the red pill, whatever it might be. Any of those things help out. Really does assist us here at the channel. Thank you very much, Geezer Man, for helping out over there on YouTube. Appreciate you so much, buddy. It's so funny. Somebody came into the chat and said, homo music. Here's the thing. If you look around you and the only thing you see is homosexual stuff, then you might be a homosexual. Because I don't see how you can look at Americans dancing to one of the most iconic songs of the 20th century, celebrating the win of one of the most iconic presidents of all time, and say, that's gay, bro. I don't know. That's just me, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, we got a lot to talk about today. There's a number of black pills that I know that we have to address. People are already going to be touching on it, I can tell. Don't worry, we're going to hit on all of them, and it's not what you think. Either way, doesn't mean we're not fighting the deep state criminal establishment, because those people are out there, and we knew it was going to be a battle. We all come with the weapons of our choosing and ability. And sometimes you got to fight back in ways that maybe you didn't anticipate. So do me a favor, hit that like button to help us out by sharing the show. Sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to get into it right about now. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're here, especially on today. Because, of course, as I mentioned, there are probably a number of black pills that people are fighting off, and I'm here to tell you exactly why they are not black pills. I'd like to begin with something that came out over the weekend. An article from Reuters, which says exclusive, Doge doesn't exist with 8 months left in its charter. People I know and love were saying, what the fuck? Why? Why is Doge shutting down 8 months before it's even supposed to? So let's take a look. First of all, I would like for you to consider the source, Reuters. Reuters is, of course, a long and storied deep state mainstream news establishment. So here we have a very short quote from the Office of Personnel Management Director Scott Cooper. All right, so it says, U.S. President Donald Trump's Department of Government Efficiency has disbanded, with 8 months left to its mandate, ending an initiative launched with fanfare as the symbol of Trump's pledge to slash the government size, but which critics say delivered few measurable savings. That doesn't exist, Office of Personnel Management Director Scott Cooper told Reuters earlier this month when asked about Doge's status. However, if you go a little bit deeper into the article, then you find that it's not all they are positioning it as. And Scott Cooper actually directly responded to the article from Reuters, and he is pushing back against the characterization that Reuters is giving it. So here, they were decommissioned, dissolved, if you will, several months before their charter was set to expire. But it's not because Doge is not going to be doing their work anymore. It's because Doge is no longer going to be operating as a separate special government agency. No, instead, Scott Cooper said something very different when he actually spoke to Reuters. And what the fake news media tends to do is to take a statement from someone and then chop and screw it. Here's a perfect example. President Trump on January 6th telling people that we were going to peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol building, and we were going to support our members of Congress and let them know that we wanted them to vote to decertify that election result so that we could have a true investigation. Now, of course, BBC took those quotes from President Trump nearly an hour apart and spliced them together and made it sound like President Trump was calling for violence against members of Congress. Never happened. Never happened. But of course, this is the internet age where things are chopped and screwed on a regular basis. So Scott Cooper responds on X, and he says, good editing by Reuters. They spliced my full comments across paragraphs 2 and 3 to create a grabbing headline. Here's the truth. Doge may not have centralized leadership under USDS, the U.S. Doge Service, but the principles of Doge remain alive and well. Deregulation, eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse, reshaping the federal workforce, and making efficiency a first-class citizen, etc. Now, Reuters is not commenting on their chopped and screwed version of what Scott said. But the truth of the matter is that Cooper has said that OPM and the White House Office of Management and Budget are actually working to ensure that the priorities of DOGE last, because DOGE has catalyzed those changes within the federal government that he mentions up there. And what's even more important, coming directly from the White House, is that DOGE has always been integrated throughout agencies, and that will continue. What does that mean? That means that each and every one of those DOGE employees who were placed within each of the federal government agencies, rather than being a separate entity working within those departments, DOGE now has a dedicated member working for those departments, working for those goals that DOGE set out to accomplish. So the fact that the agency has been disbanded as a separate agency 8 months prior to their charter actually running out is a good thing. It means that we don't need them to be operating outside of those agencies. We have fully infiltrated those agencies, and each and every one of those employees now has their own office within these various federal hideouts. President Trump gave a clear mandate to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse across the federal government, and he continues to actively deliver on that commitment. So nothing really has changed except that now each and every one of these federal government agencies has an employee or employees that are dedicated to the goals that DOGE set out to accomplish. So that means that there is no stoppage of work. The stated goals that DOGE set out to achieve have not ended. They are now becoming part of the actual culture within each and every one of those agencies. So DOGE is not dead. DOGE is not dead. DOGE has now become a permanent part of each and every one of these government bodies. That is a wonderful thing. I don't see how that could be something that people would be upset about, unless, of course, they didn't read the full comment coming from Scott Cooper. And if that's the case, well, then I can forgive you. Because if you take the word of Reuters as a news source, well, then, unfortunately, you're going to be sorely let down at the end of the day because they are fake news. Now, real briefly, I would like to touch upon the fledgling candidacy of one Eric Swalwell. As you know, we announced it last week. Eric Swalwell has announced in the middle of the night, Thursday night, Friday morning, he announced that he's going to be running for governor of California. Well, the only problem is that his candidacy for the governor of California is constitutionally ineligible, because at the center of that disqualification comes the permanent residence status that Eric Swalwell no longer enjoys in the state of California. In the same way that he is not eligible to be a congressman or a senator for the state of California because he's a resident of the state of Maryland, he's living in D.C., he cannot be the governor of California. So Eric Swalwell's own legally binding mortgage documents state on them, as we showed last week, they are signed under the penalty of perjury that home in Washington, D.C. is his primary residence, which makes him ineligible to run for governor of California. So that means that Eric Swalwell, by his own sworn declaration, is not domiciled in the state of California, because his domicile, not merely his mailing address, is the standard eligibility to run for governor, according to California law. So therefore, Eric Swalwell is legally disqualified from becoming governor, and he must withdraw his candidacy and his announcement immediately. Now, here are the laws, because laws mean nothing unless they are enforced. California's constitutional requirements and election law. California eligibility rules that to become governor, and these rules derive from the Constitution, Article 5, Section 2. They state that a person is only eligible to be governor if that person is a citizen of the United States. Okay, check. And here it is, a resident of the state for 5 years immediately preceding the governor's election. So even if Eric Swalwell purchases a home or rents a condo in California, he has not been a resident of the state of California for the preceding 5 years. That operative word is resident. In California law, resident does not mean simply getting mail at a P.O. box in the state of California, or even somebody who owns property. It means to domicile, one's true fixed permanent home. And California's election code 349 makes that point abundantly clear. A domicile is the place where a person's habitation is fixed and where they have the intention of remaining. At any given time, a person may only have one domicile. Now, you cannot have a domicile in the state of California and the District of Columbia. It's either or. And given Eric Swalwell's, I was going to say Eric Schmidt, Eric Swalwell's own attestation on his mortgage documents, he has not resided in the state of California for several years. His only domicile is there at his home, townhouse, brownstone, whatever it might be, in the District of Columbia. His mortgage documents to purchase this residence that I've just mentioned, 209 9th Street Southeast in Washington, D.C., spell it out in brilliant Kodachrome. On the opening pages of the deed of trust, Swalwell and his wife are both listed as the borrowers. Now, the document is a District of Columbia deed of trust. It contains the standard federal Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac provisions for owner-occupant primary residence declarations. In Clause 8 of that very document, it includes a single line which is going to make it very difficult for Eric Swalwell to keep his candidacy going. Material representations include, but are not limited to, representations concerning borrower's occupancy of the property as borrower's principal residence. That signature page shows that Eric Swalwell and his wife signed under seal. They affirmed every covenant in that document. They didn't say we agree to this and we don't agree to that. The Swalwell's signatures confirm that he is bound by the principal residence owner occupancy declaration. On the security affidavit, page 20, Eric Swalwell again signs under oath regarding his ownership and his use of that property in Washington, D.C. And guess what? This one is subject to criminal penalties for making false statements. These signatures, my friends, are not symbolic. They both carry legal consequences. They have declared a principal residence in the District of Columbia. This has happened on both legal and financial documents. Eric Swalwell declared his domicile is Washington, D.C. In that moment, he sacrificed any claim to domicile that he may have had in the state of California. So why does this disqualify him? Again, because the law in California is crystal clear. If you want to become governor, you have to be a candidate whose domicile has been in the state of California for at least 5 years prior to an election, and a signed legal statement of principal residence in another jurisdiction is direct evidence against that legal domicile in the state of California. The courts look at two core elements when deciding a case like this, because it's likely they may have to. Number one, where does the candidate actually live most of the time? In Eric Swalwell's situation, that's the Washington, D.C. property. Number two is, where does the candidate declare their primary permanent home? Well, dadgummit, wouldn't you know it, Eric Swalwell's mortgage explains both in excruciating detail, because he owns and occupies one home in Washington, D.C. He doesn't have another place in California. Legally and financially, again, sworn under penalty of perjury, the place in Washington, D.C. is his legal principal residence, and that is, in California's eyes, the legal definition of domicile. Even if he did own a secondary home in California, which he doesn't, or occasionally visits California, this does not qualify Swalwell to become governor because, again, he has declared Washington, D.C. to be his principal residence. And the California Attorney General and the courts have repeatedly maintained that a candidate cannot simply claim residency in California to run for office while they are legally living somewhere else. And Attorney General for the state of California, Rob Bonta, is in a whole heap of shit right now, you guys. Some brand new information came out about Rob Bonta over the weekend. Remember Shen Tao, the mayor of Oakland, who is caught up in that bribery scandal? We briefly reported on Rob Bonta being caught up in that bribery scandal as well. It's gotten much worse. It is now also a blackmail scandal. A whistleblower has come forward to suggest that they, Those people who were indicted are in possession of damaging and criminal evidence to suggest that Rob Bonta was involved with perhaps women who were much younger than the official adult age. Don't know exactly where that falls, but all the evidence suggests that these individuals that Bonta was slumming around with were interested in attaining blackmail material on him so that they could control him in the future. And it does look like that's happened. The whistleblower is still in the process of presenting all of his evidence. And of course, I'm sure the DOJ is probably going to have some follow-up for us on that in the future. So again, a domicile, according to California, is an exclusive status you can have. You can only have one. You can't have a domicile in Washington, D.C. and have a domicile in the state of California. You can't claim primary residence in Washington, D.C., so you can get a lower mortgage rate and all the benefits that come along with it, along with lower insurance. And then also claim to meet the California constitutional residency requirements. It's not legally possible. So Eric Swalwell's own filings have made him ineligible to run for the office of governor. Now, the 5-year requirement, this is also fatal because Eric Swalwell has not lived in California for the last 5 years. He abandoned, if he did want to immediately abandon his domicile in the District of Columbia, establish a new home domicile in the state of California, and then live in California as his primary home, he would have to do it for 5 years before he would ever qualify legally to run for the governor of California. But he hasn't done any of this. He can't retroactively pretend that he's been living in California for the last 5 years. Everybody sees him in the District of Columbia. He hasn't had a continuous domicile outside of Washington, D.C. for a very long time. He would have to have a location that he was living more than, say, the majority of the time in D.C., and his domicile in Washington, D.C. has legally been established since 2022. It has not been the state of California. So Eric Swalwell is going to have to withdraw. There's really no way around it. This is obviously some commentary that I'm providing on it, but this is a fairly well-established legal precedent. The state of California has actually prosecuted cases like these or stepped in at times in the past. So Eric is completely disqualified. So anyways, good for him. We'll see you next time, Eric Swalwell, maybe in another 5 years. All right. Now, over the weekend, X has come out with a brand new feature. This brand new feature allows you to tap the join date of an account that you're looking at, and it will tell you the location of that account. So in the instance of myself, it says the United States of America. In other instances, it might say North America. There's different ways that you can categorize it. And I saw people suggesting that Americans were not actually Americans because it said North America and not the United States of America. That's not true. That's simply just a categorization on the back end. It all depends on if you're using, say, a VPN to obscure your IP address so that it doesn't lock you down to a particular state. It could also show that you're in another country if you don't want people to know what country you're in. It depends on what the app store is that you that you downloaded X from initially. If you're not using X on your phone, then it's going to be just kind of nebulous and say North America, because there won't be an app store that you've downloaded the app from. You're just accessing it from the web. And so a lot of people have been exposed as actually being Africans or Pakistanis or Indians, people who were like doing all kinds of stuff to rile up the base and, claim that they were this or that, and they haven't been. The same is happening to people on the left as it is happening to people on the right. One of those very important and noteworthy cases over the weekend was the actual official DHS account. Now, it was created in 2008, which was during the tenure of George W. Bush. It was Michael Chertoff who was running the Department of Homeland Security. Michael Chertoff is a Jewish American citizen. He may have dual citizenship. I would be surprised if he didn't. And he also owned a security company which became fabulously wealthy as a result of some of the various moves that were made with the USA Patriot Act, putting in the microwave backscatter machines inside airports. That was Michael Chertoff's country. The work of social media for the creation of DHS under Michael Chertoff's reign was actually farmed out to an Israeli security company. So when you went to the DHS account, it said that it was from Israel and that it said that the App Store was from the Israeli App Store. So there is an explanation for that, but it still pissed a lot of people off. Why is an official U.S. government account showing that it's still operating out of Israel? Shouldn't be that way at all. Here we have another instance, Alex Soros. Alex Soros appears to have fled from the United States to Niger. Niger is an interesting choice because Niger doesn't have an extradition treaty with the United States of America. And it wasn't all that long ago that President Trump had suggested that the Soros family should be investigated and perhaps arrested. And of course, Alex Soros has billions and billions and billions of dollars. He is now effectively doing the job that his father did for many decades. He's a Democratic mega donor, and this feature that we're talking about is drawing information not only from past details, but also from the current address geolocation. Now, I suppose it is possible that Alex Soros could be using a VPN, but this guy has got like FU money. He could very easily be in Niger in some kind of a compound surrounded by, cinder block in the middle of the desert, or not so much the desert, but the savannah, I should say. And he could be living there because he has a private helicopter that can take him wherever he needs to go. So this, I think, is probably legit, that Alex Soros is likely in Niger. The man probably has homes all around the world. Now, this, of course, is something that really caught people's eyes because of what President Trump had said previously. Alex Soros hasn't confirmed that he's in Niger, but a lot of people are asking the question. And if you haven't had an opportunity to test this yet, I suggest going and doing it. Take a look at maybe some accounts that you thought maybe were stirring the shit pot, so to speak. People who perhaps may not be exactly who they say. If they're not using images that appear to be legit, maybe they're AI generated or something like that. But there's a ton of these accounts that are supposedly, well, they're not officially affiliated with the administration, but you see a lot of like Melania Trump news, Donald Trump news, Caroline Leavitt news, and they just kind of repost things or ask questions to get engagement. And they're making a ton of money on X. And they are essentially trying to bait the base and roll people in to follow them and to give them that engagement so that they can make as much money as possible. So try it out, see what you find, and let me know. Let me know when we come back here. All right. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, also over the weekend, I believe it happened on Friday, she announced that she's going to be leaving her seat in Congress. She put out a 11-minute video. She said a lot of things that I agree with, essentially talking about the criminal and corrupt nature of Washington, D.C. But in my opinion, she had the sort of attitude that a spoiled and upset child has when they take their toys and they go home. Because she was elected to represent her district for another year. Rather than sticking around for another year, she is going to be leaving on January 5th. January 5th is right after the cutoff date for her pension to vest. It's not a tremendous amount of money. I believe it's just over $1,000 a month that she's going to be getting. But still, why are any members of Congress getting elected and then getting free health care and getting pensions for the rest of their life after serving for 5 years? and essentially doing basically nothing. You know, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene was a cheerleader for Donald Trump a lot of the time. But the truth of the matter is that Congress is broken, and I feel that people get rewarded for not doing their job. I've had a hell of a lot of jobs throughout my life. I am not going to have a pension when I stop being a podcaster. Really don't know what I'm going to do when that day hits. But if I was to run for office just to, get a pension, I would feel pretty scummy about it myself. But people are now saying, and she earned over $49 million. I've heard a lot of people talk about the money Marjorie Taylor Greene earned while in Congress. I know that before coming to Congress, she used to run a construction company with her husband. They would net about $5 million a year. Don't know how much of that actually went to her and her husband. I know they got divorced because going to D.C. apparently ruined her marriage. I think that what I said last week about her potentially running for a higher office makes a lot of sense in relation to her leaving office, because now she can focus on running that race. Of course, I think a lot of people in her district are going to feel that she's left them in the lurch because now they don't have representation in Congress. Not that it necessarily made a difference before, but certainly it's the sentiment of it. And Siesta Randy, I don't really have the money right now. That's the problem. If I had money, I would be buying Bitcoin, and I was waiting for a dip like this to come. But I'm glad. I wish I had more money to buy Bitcoin. All right, now. Someone suggested that Marjorie Taylor Greene is considering a run for president in 2028. And apparently she's not too happy about that. So let's see what she said. Time magazine reported, and again, consider the source, MTG is leaving Congress, but that may not be the end of her political ambitions. The Georgia lawmaker has privately told allies that she has considered running for president in 2028, according to two people who have spoken with her directly about the prospect, and three others familiar with her thinking. The possibility comes amid the dramatic rupture in Greene's relationship with President Donald Trump, which contributed to her decision to announce on Friday that she would resign from the House of Representatives in January. MTG responded to Time on Sunday morning, and she apparently angrily denied the report. She also went on a long rant about how the political industrial class would never allow someone like her to solve the pressing problems that America faces because she is too principled. She then went on to a long list of crises created by the American government over the course of several decades, and closed by telling Americans to not get blinded by the shiny objects of the political industrial complex. Here is her statement in full. Let me take a drink. All right. Time claims sources told them I'm running for president in 2028, which means this is a complete lie, and they made it up because they can't even quote the names of the people who they said claim it. That's not journalism. It's called lying. I'm not running for president and never said I wanted to, and have only laughed about it with anyone who would mention it. If you fell for those headlines, you're still being lulled every day into psychosis by the political industrial complex that always has an agenda when it does something like this. Running for president requires traveling all over the country, begging for donations all day, every day to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, arguing political talking points every day to the point of exhaustion, destroying your health and having no personal life in order to attempt to get enough votes to become president, all to go to work into a system that refuses to fix any of America's problems. The fact that I'd have to go through all that would be totally blocked from truly fixing anything is exactly why I would never do it. And most importantly, I'm not the kind of person who's willing to make the deals that must be made in order to be allowed to have that title. Again, I'm not motivated by power and titles. The political industrial complex has destroyed our country and will never allow someone like me or you to rise to power and actually solve the crises that plague all of us. That would go against its business model. Instead of swallowing lies that you were spoon-fed and parroting attack phrases against me in your comments, you all should open your eyes and focus on real actions and what is actually happening to our country. Are you happy with $38 trillion in debt and the fact that it will only drastically get higher? Are you happy that Social Security won't be able to pay full benefits starting in 2033, and most of us will never receive any benefits at all? Are you happy that Democrats created our health care crisis with Obamacare and tax credits and Republicans refused to fix it? Are you happy about paying taxes on literally everything and being one of the highest tax people on earth? Are you worried we might get invaded one day and ignoring the fact that our government already allowed us to be invaded not only through our southern border, but also by constantly handing out legal visas that steal your jobs? Are you afraid we might go to war, but ignore the fact that our government already sent us to war to fight for foreign countries and cause not only our own for decades already? If you are still fighting each other about the shiny objects the political industrial complex blinds you with every day and not paying attention to the damage that has been done and is still being done, then Americans will never join together to save themselves. Well, like I said, I can't disagree with a good number of the things she says. Siesta Randy says, here's a couple thousand Satoshis. Love your show. I love you too, brother. Thank you for that. All right. And, but I don't know if this is a legitimate turn of events that Marjorie Taylor Greene has taken or if this is some kayfabian narrative. We don't know and we won't know. Oh, like I said on Friday, I believe. Yeah, I said it on Friday. You know, I mean, I can't get too emotionally connected to any of these people because they're all basically television characters. And Marjorie Taylor Greene might say that she is like the most principled person in Washington, D.C., but I tend to believe that Tim Burchett might be the most principled person in Washington, D.C. And, again, Marjorie Taylor Greene took off in the middle of her term. I mean, she could have tried to do something good for the rest of her term, but instead she took her toys and she went home. I think that that's kind of disappointing. I'm just going to be honest about that. It's really unfortunate, and I don't know what's going to happen to the people of her district. You know, I mean, are they going to be represented in any meaningful way? What are they going to get afterwards? We'll see what happens here. But if I'm correct and she does have aspirations for higher office, well, that announcement will likely be made rather soon. Now, CanCon suggested something earlier this morning that perhaps MTG would run for Secretary of State in Georgia. If she was Secretary of State, she would have a tremendous power over the election system in Georgia. And I think that Marjorie Taylor Greene would likely be an asset in that respect because she has for a long time been a supporter of President Trump. And she also was one of the first people to come forward and say that she believed the election of 2020 had not been honest. So we'll go ahead and withhold judgment, as I said the other day. Somebody else had gotten Max Poodle. I don't know if you're out there, but he basically told me to F off because I sounded like I didn't want to offend anybody. So that I told him he was an effing. Anyways, I offended him in my comment, and I don't know if he took it as a joke, which it was meant to be, because I clearly don't care about offending people. But if there's just a situation at hand and I can't personally make a sound judgment on it, I'm not going to just say this is happening because somebody wants me to say this is happening. I mean, there are so many ifs, ands, or buts. Everything is twisting in the wind, and I can't control the actions of anybody. So anyways, MTG will be watching, but I honestly don't believe that she is going to be separated from President Trump for forever. Everybody comes back. Everybody comes back because whatever she thinks about the United States of America, President Trump is not creating those problems. He's the only one solving them. So I hope that she becomes an asset to President Trump outside of Congress. And I am not going to call her Marjorie Taylor Greene, although it's a catchy phrase. President Trump likes to, do that stuff on X, and I think it works for him. It's just not my style. So anyways, let's continue. President Trump has announced earlier today that he is designating the Venezuelan cocaine criminal cartel, the Cartel de los Soles, which is allegedly run by President Maduro, as a foreign terrorist organization. Now, this comes very shortly after President Trump had publicly said that he was willing to meet with Maduro. Also last week, there was a statement from the president of Colombia who said that if Maduro is deposed, we would allow him to live here and he would be able to live out his life without getting arrested or going to prison, and maybe somebody else could take over Venezuela. Of course, there's also the presence of American warships in the Caribbean Sea. A lot of people have assumed that the United States was going to invade Venezuela. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that whatever happens in Venezuela, it's going to be all about addressing the cocaine cartels that have been essentially operating with impunity for a very long time. I think it's possible that BB may be right on the Sovereign Alliance tip for Maduro, that maybe Maduro has a country that he is technically the president of, but he's not technically in charge of a large portion of it. Those dense Venezuelan jungles are the perfect places for cartels to post up, to produce cocaine, and to operate like a guerrilla force. Colombia had the exact same thing going on for many years. Even though Colombia and its politicians may not have been dirty, they basically had no choice but to operate within this like narco state that they were elected to lead. It's kind of crazy because back in the early 1980s, when Pablo Escobar was rising to power, he tried to become a congressman, essentially. He actually got elected, and then they were able to like kick him out of Congress. And that was probably the worst thing they could have done, because then he ended up becoming the total narco madman that he was. And you can watch the show Narcos to hear all about that. But the situation in Venezuela may be very similar. Maybe Maduro wants to get out from under the thumb of the narcos. There's also the presence of Smartmatic in Venezuela, as well as the Central Intelligence Agency in South America. Its long and storied history with the narco traffickers, the human trafficking aspect, the weapons trafficking aspect, the narcotics trafficking aspect. I mean, I think all of this has been a black budget funding source for the Central Intelligence Agency. This is why you see senators and congressmen coming forward and saying, you got to stop blowing up the cocaine boats that are coming to the United States. I mean, sure, they probably like to do cocaine, but they also are probably well aware that their benefactors are being funded by the cocaine that is coming into the United States of America. That money has got to flow. And if the money stops flowing, well, then a major source of income for the global intelligence apparatus, which is a large part. That was so gross. I'm so sorry. I just burped on camera. A large part of the global criminal cabal, then, of course, they are going to have a hard time getting their wits together and continuing operations. So there's a lot going on there. We don't even really know who the Cartel de los Sols are. All we know is these are the guys running the cocaine. Would it really surprise me if it turns out that it was rogue CIA agents that were a major part of the backbone of this cartel? Absolutely not. If that's the case, and Maduro says, okay, we'll go ahead and let the United States take care of these terrorists for us, hey, there you go. And then, by the way, while we're here, we're also just going to take a look at this election infrastructure, and we'll let you know what we find. So I'm very excited to see what happens in Venezuela as a result of this announcement. Now, funnily enough, Peter Bernegger, who is an election analyst and whistleblower himself, he's the guy who discovered the smurfing that was done through Act Blue and WinRed to a lesser degree. He quotes Rasmussen Reports here. And Rasmussen Reports has been talking specifically about this designation, but for a long time they've been going over documentation from the Smartmatic case where whistleblowers had come forward to talk about what they did in Venezuela to design this software and then implement it all around the world so that they could use it to steal things like elections in as many different ways as they possibly could. So Peter Bernegger says, yes, the former Dominion Huawei data center in Belgrade, that was disabled just prior to the 2024 election. Well, it has now been entirely dismantled. This is the same data center that Peter Tickton said was kept offline for the 2024 election, which is what made it possible for Donald Trump to win the election and made it impossible for the votes to be stacked for Kamala Harris as they were in 2020. He also says key engineers who designed and ran the election fraud system are now in America and under U.S. government protection and ready to testify. This is the testimony that Rasmussen has been pointing to. Now, this hasn't been spoken about widely. We've only talked about it a little bit here on the channel in regards to this testimony that had come out. It hasn't been published in any sort of major news sources. Nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole because obviously, election fraud, election integrity, election security, it's not the kind of thing that the deep state wants to talk about. But these people have been in the hands of the U.S. government for quite some time. If there is a targeted operation in Venezuela, it's my opinion that that would be one of the biggest reasons why. Peter Bernegger continues, the electronic election system now in use have been newly examined by federal authorities and are apparently full of illegal CCP Chinese-sourced components. This has also been widely reported. And we also know that DHS has been working with the DOJ and going into all of these various states where we've had big problems in the past to get a look at this election infrastructure and to get a look at the qualified voter files to make sure that illegal aliens are not actually voting or dead people are not voting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the presence of these illegal components inside election infrastructure equipment is another way that everything could be rerouted and directed in to the candidate of their choice. And then finally, yes, an American armada, the likes of which has not been assembled in this new century right now, quietly sits off the coast of U.S. election theft central, which is, of course, Venezuela. Today, November 24th, and Cartel de los Soles is now a foreign terrorist organization. They have been part of the election theft. They have been killing Americans with unlimited quantities of very high-quality cocaine. And this is a direct slam on Marjorie Taylor Greene because in her announcement, she said, there is no 4D chess and there is no plan. Well, it appears to me that if Marjorie Taylor Greene believes that, she has taken that black pill and she has swallowed it hard, probably after biting down to get it into her belly as quick as possible. Because everything that we're seeing here and everything that I talk about on a daily basis, to me, looks like a military precision-led operation to take down the global criminal cartel. And they may not say it openly, but it's not just cocaine, which has put these people in our military off the coast of Venezuela, especially not in the wake of whistleblowers from Smartmatic coming forward and saying, guess what? We did it. And we want to tell you how we did it, and we want to tell you how you can stop it in the future. I think that's exactly what's happening. It looks to me like there's a plan. All right, now, I understand that Donald Trump can't know everything. Donald Trump can't orchestrate everything. But there are solutions to problems that have already been worked out. There are moves and counter moves which have already been plotted. There is wargaming going on at every single juncture of every single decision. And given a certain set of circumstances, our government operating in the sphere of war, in the theater of war, they have the ability to predict the maneuvers and the responses of our enemies. And given those responses, we have certain responses that are ready to go as well. If the response is slightly different, you better believe we've got a contingency to deal with that. And right now, I believe that us going into Venezuela is going to blow the lid off of a number of big things. And that, to me, my friends, sure looks like one hell of a plan. Thank you, DJT. And also thank you so much to Micro Toolmaker for dropping the $55 Rumble rant where we go one, we go all. Thank you also, sir, for the 10 subscriptions that you dropped as well. Thank you very, very much for your support. Also, everybody who got one of those, make sure that you say thank you to Micro Toolmaker as well. Now, on top of that, Earlier today, President Trump also signed a designation to create a foreign terrorist organization designee in the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, this was announced over the weekend, and today it actually happened. I would also like to mention to you, shortly after the visit of Zoran Mamdani on Friday is when President Trump made this announcement. Now, a lot of people were kind of confused about that announcement. President Trump was so gracious. He was so kind. He was so nice. He told Mamdani he could call him a fascist and a dictator and authoritarian. He doesn't even care. All he cares about is that the people of New York are taken care of. In the same way that many of us looked and said, wow, what does that say about Mamdani that President Trump invited him to the White House? Well, at the end of the day, President Trump is the president of everyone. Doesn't matter what your party is. Doesn't matter what your politics are. Doesn't matter which city you're the mayor of. He's still your president. And President Trump wants the people of America, regardless of their affiliation or where they live, to be successful. And, of course, the supporters of Zoran Mamdani want him to go against everything that President Trump does. They want him to call President Trump a fascist. They want him to look like he is fighting against this authoritarian government. Well, it makes it real difficult to do that when this so-called authoritarian government welcomes you into their home and says, how can I help you make New York great again? And then he associates Zoran Mamdani with making America great again and making New York great again. That diminishes Zoran Mamdani in the eyes of his base. And to further dictate the appearance of President Trump in the eyes of his base, despite having a communist mayor-elect from New York visiting him in the White House and seeming to have a fairly chummy arrangement with him, immediately thereafter, he then declares the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization and the Council on American Islamic Relations. I guarantee you that the supporters of Zoran Mamdani said, what the F? First, Mamdani goes to visit President Trump in the White House, and then right after that, he's telling us that our people are terrorists. Oh, my God, and Mamdani's not going to do a dang thing about it, is he? He's not going to do a dang thing about it. President Trump has basically shot a harpoon straight through the supporters of Zoran Mamdani, and he's made him look like a fool to the people who voted for him. On top of that, he's out there asking his supporters for money. I just need another $5 million, guys, if I'm really going to do what I want to do for New York. And even when that happens, I'm not going to be able to give you anything for free because we don't have any money. All the talk that I gave about giving a free buses or free subway rides or free surgery for anybody who wants to come to New York, I can't do any of that. So I guess I kind of have to go and lean on President Trump because he's offered his help. I got nothing. Zoran Mamdani looks like a fool to the people who voted for him, to the radical left people who voted for him. And President Trump made that happen. Now he has declared CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood a foreign terrorist organization. This is going to shut down their ability to fundraise. This is going to stop their ability to operate within the United States of America. All of their money can now be seized by the United States government, and anybody who is CARE or Muslim Brotherhood here in the United States, they can now be arrested. They can be charged. Anything that they're doing to subvert American democracy, this wonderful constitutional republic, they can be arrested for. Now, at the time that this article was written, the full plan had not been released. The White House had not even given us a timeline. So today, that timeline became critical. It became crystallized. We've seen the Muslim Brotherhood acting across the global stage for many years. Many people were perplexed by Obama's support of the Muslim Brotherhood. We had Muslim Brotherhood people inside Barack Obama's administration. We had so many different instances of where it just made absolutely no sense. But now the Muslim Brotherhood is going to be in a very different position. This formal terrorist designation is going to accomplish a number of policy goals that all of those previous administrations had avoided. This designation allows the U.S. government to use different strong legal tools to disrupt the network of the Brotherhood and of the Council on American Islamic Relations. So like I said, we could freeze their assets. We can block transfers of money to them. We can impose sanctions on individuals and entities that are intermediaries for the organization. This is going to be essential because the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood depends on international fundraising disguised as humanitarian activity. It would also provide a designation that would strengthen coordination with our allies that have already taken action. Places like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates have already banned the Muslim Brotherhood, and they have restricted their political reach because they have produced years of instability directly aligned with factions that are associated with the Muslim Brotherhood. So aligning U.S. policy with all of the countries that we've just begun to do a lot of business with, countries that are now going to be great allies to us in the Middle East, far greater than they ever would in the past, gives us the ability to engage in intelligence sharing. Intelligence sharing is one of those things that we've been doing with Israel for many years. And now both Israel and mouthpieces of Israel have come forward and said that they want to disengage from the United States. So, okay, great. So now we're going to have this ability to do intelligence sharing and data sharing with a number of other nations inside the Middle East. So the designation is most of all going to increase transparency here inside the United States because, as you are all well aware, we've got a number of Muslim Brotherhood-linked groups who have been operating domestically for a very long time. They've been shaping policy debates. They've been doing advocacy work without fully disclosing all of their various international affiliations. This policy, designating them a foreign terrorist organization, is going to require a level of public accountability and transparency that would prevent foreign influence from shaping American political discussions under the guise of some type of civic engagement. President Trump has shown a willingness to treat national security as a matter of clear evidence, not just political pressure. And so recognizing the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, it's justified. It's going to strengthen our U.S. relationships and interests overseas. It's going to support the efforts of our allies to fully stabilize their own nations, and it's going to reduce the reach of extremist ideology for these extreme Muslim points now and into the future. It is a wonderful move, and I hope that you're as excited about it as I am. Now, President Trump also over the weekend, after I did all of that reporting on the scams and the fraud in Somalia, he has announced that he is terminating the Somalis' temporary protected status in the state of Minnesota. This is where most of those Somalis have been flocking to over the years. It took place immediately as soon as he announced it. This happened on Friday night, and it is directly related to all of the reporting that I have bringing you and that many others have been bringing about the unprecedented level of fraud that is taking place in the state of Minnesota by Somalian immigrants. So, President Trump announced the immediate termination of temporary protected status for Somalis. This is a move that opens the door for what? For rapid deportation. And where the majority of these people live? Ilhan Omar's district. So the termination of TPS status for these Somali immigrants comes after many years of exploding crime, the massive Feeding Our Future Medicaid fraud scandal, where, as I told you last week, a 77th individual has just pled guilty. We're talking about money that was being funneled from the U.S. taxpayer through fraudulent means to be given to an al-Shabaab terror group. U.S. Attorney Joseph Thompson believes that billions of dollars in taxpayer money have been stolen from these welfare fraud schemes. To be clear, this is not an isolated scheme, Thompson had said back in September when addressing the Feeding Our Future discussion. From Feeding Our Future to housing stabilization services and now autism services, as we've shown, Medicaid fraud as well, massive fraud schemes from a web that has stolen billions of dollars in taxpayer money. Over 70 defendants, 77, almost all Somalian, have already been charged in that scheme. More indictments are expected. I, of course, will continue to report on this as long as they continue to indict people. And President Trump finally responded on Friday night on Truth Social. He said, Minnesota, under Governor Walz, is a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity. I am, as president of the United States, it's like a big hammer right there, hereby terminating, effective immediately, the temporary protected status for Somalis in Minnesota. Somali gangs are terrorizing the people of that great state, and billions of dollars are missing. Send them back to where they came from. It's over. But it's not. The vast majority of Somali TPS holders live in Minnesota, which contains the largest Somalian population in the United States of America. We've got estimates between 80 to 100,000, and Representative Ilhan Omar's congressional district is quite literally the epicenter. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services explains it like this. The Secretary of Homeland Security may designate a foreign country for temporary protected status due to conditions in the country that temporarily prevent the country's nationals from returning safely, or in certain circumstances where the country is unable to handle the return of its nationals adequately. USCIS may grant TPS to eligible nationals of certain countries or parts of countries who are already in the United States, and eligible individuals without nationality who last resided in the designated country may also be granted TPS. Now, once they are granted TPS, an individual also cannot be detained by DHS on the basis of his or her immigration status in the United States. But now they can. TPS is a temporary benefit that does not lead to lawful permanent resident status or give any other immigration status. And importantly, ICE data consistently shows that more than 4,000 Somali nationals currently already have final orders of removal and are subject to deportation. With the removal of TPS, that backlog can now be unburdened. It can be cleared out rather rapidly. TPS protections are now gone, and Somalia has already been cooperating on repatriation flights. You gotta love it. Now, since we're talking about the removal of TPS status from Somalians in Minnesota, let's just check in with a couple of additional instances of fraud which have just begun to come out. Take a look at this. The Minnesota audits reveal that Minnesota officials failed to complete the required security checks for computer systems, which are what determine who receives SNAP benefits. And because of that willful, incomplete audit requirement not being done, this program has distributed $70 million in taxpayer-funded benefits per month, which means that a lot of that is likely fraud. I got to refresh.
Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. The program distributes nearly $70 million in benefits each month in Minnesota alone. Well, 5 Investigates has uncovered audits that show the state did not perform required security checks of the computer system that determines who is eligible to receive this money. It is a discovery that has SNAP recipients like Mateo Halbesleben worried about the safety of his personal data. Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or
what else do we have going on in Minnesota? Because it doesn't start there. It doesn't stop there. Now, an aide to the mayor named Abdi Nur Salah, Somalian, has pled guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. What did he do? Well, he created a fake NGO, and he started funneling taxpayer money into it. And guess where donations went from this fake NGO? They went to Somalia's favorite congresswoman, Ilhan Omar. Now, that's not all. This scandal has duffel bags full of cash, Lamborghinis, kickbacks, and trips all paid for on the taxpayer's dime. And again, Al-Shabaab, that terrorist military group back in Somalia, was receiving stolen funds from these schemes in Minnesota, estimated to be in the billions of dollars, funneled via informal Hawala networks to Somalia, where Al-Shabaab extorts fees. They control key territories. Federal sources confirm that millions reached this al-Qaeda affiliate. One investigator stated the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer. Now, a former senior policy aide to Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, Abdi Nur Salah, pled guilty earlier this year, January in 2025, to wire fraud in that Feeding Our Future scheme, which we've spoken about on a number of occasions. He used his influence to lobby against shutdowns. Donations from fraudsters went to Representative Ilhan Omar's campaigns, later donated to food shelves, and her enforcer, Guhad Hashi Saeed, was convicted in August of this year for $2.9 million in fraud. A state Senate candidate facilitated campaign inflows from this scheme. Here are some of the bribes that were paid off. There was cash in a bag that was paid to a juror. We talked about this one. $120,000 in physical cash was delivered in a bag to influence a juror against convicting some of those defendants in the Feeding Our Future trial, part of an obstruction of justice attempt. There were cash kickbacks that were paid to employees and sponsors. Up to $1,500 per child were paid as cash incentives to families and providers in that autism services fraud scheme we talked about last week. Early intensive developmental and behavioral intervention program is what it was called, totaling millions across fake diagnoses for these kids. And I'm sure you'll remember last week when we spoke about this, the autism rate in the state of Minnesota, it's like 10 times the national average because they don't actually have autism. Back again in the Feeding Our Futures cash fraud that was going on. There were also bribes that were being given to staff. Over $225,000 in cash payments from defendants like Abdikadir Aniashi Mohammed to employee Abdikaram Idala for sponsoring fraudulent child nutrition sites. Similar payments of $49,000, $79,000, $87,000, and $100,000 were documented across multiple pleas. This is why we've had 77 people agreed to plead guilty. There were phony invoices that were fabricated as part of bribes. Fraudsters submitted fake invoices to justify reimbursements, effectively using them to launder and distribute bribe funds in schemes like Northside Wellness. There was $2.4 million there, and the M5 Cafe, over $1 million there. The Hawala network transfers were used to extort fees. So these Hawala networks are basically like informal ways that people can get money to others back home in Somalia. And millions in fraudulent welfare funds got routed through this informal Somali Hawala money transfer systems to the nation of Somalia, where Al-Shabaab is extracting mandatory fees or extorting portions of these fees, benefiting the group via community remittance, which is tied to DHS benefits. And there was also attempted bribery of public officials. There are reports of direct cash bribe attempts to county employees and state officials in the Housing Stabilization Services Program, including offers to overlook falsified records and billing for deceased clients, all of it flagged by internal DHS warnings. So President Trump did the right thing when he removed this TPS status. And it means that we're going to see a lot of people getting deported back to Somalia, and it's going to happen very quickly. Okay. All right. Now, Ilhan Omar has commented on President Trump's TPS removal. Before we get into that comment from here, you guys have probably noticed Rumble is growing fast and it's not slowing down anytime soon. They're building a real alternative to big tech that puts creators first and actually protects free speech. And right now you can get Rumble Premium. It's an easy way to upgrade your experience and support the platform. With Premium, you get ad-free viewing across this entire platform. No pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content that you come for. Plus, members of Rumble Premium unlock exclusive content like bonus videos, behind-the-scenes drops, and even more from your favorite creators. I, myself, play video games a couple of times a month. I beat a level on RoboCop this weekend. And right now, Rumble is offering $10 off an annual subscription. To take advantage of it, you just go to rumble.com/premium and use the promo code STUDIO at checkout. Once again, that's rumble.com/premium with the promo code STUDIO, and you see no more ads, more freedom, and content that you actually care about. That's the deal. Thank you to Rumble, and thank you for the opportunity. Okay, let's go and see what Ilhan Omar thinks about President Trump destroying her political ambitions. Let's see. She responded to the news several hours after seeing a Trump fan mock her by saying, "It's over, Ilhan. Go back to where you came from. Deportations are coming courtesy of real Donald Trump." Unsurprisingly, she was not amused by that tweet. She wrote, "Good luck celebrating a policy change that doesn't really have much impact on the Somalis you love to hate. We are here to stay." However, the vast majority of Somali TPS holders, as I stated earlier, are living in Minnesota. They contain the largest Somali population in the United States of America, between 80 to 100,000, with her congressional district being the largest single congregation. But Somali gangs are linked to violent crime, they're linked to human trafficking, they're linked to fraud, waste, and abuse, and now confirmed terrorism financing through stolen American taxpayer dollars. ICE data consistently shows that more than 4,000 Somali nationals already have that final deportation order in place. And there is, of course, also speculation about Ilhan Omar's own status in America may be at risk because there is considerable evidence to show she may have committed immigration fraud by fraudulently and allegedly marrying her brother. So while TPS may not apply directly to Ilhan Omar, this may come back to bite her in the ass because it could be a devastating effect on the community, and it could lead to a criminal case against her at the end of the day. So we're obviously going to have to keep an eye on Minnesota and Ilhan Omar. Let me say thank you also to Trump One and Judy the Lady Pug for the cookies. Thank you to Red Gun for the can. Thank you to Sean Joe and 123 SKG for the cans. Thank you to Red Gun for the shades. And thank you to Sean Joe for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cookies. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for the support. All right, now it also gets worse because the Minnesota Republican congressional delegation is now calling for a full investigation into Somali fraud, that fraud that we just discussed, funneling taxpayer dollars into a terrorist network in Somalia. We can see here, this is to U.S. Attorney Rosen. He is the U.S. Attorney for this district in Minnesota, and it is it is written by Tom Emmer, Pete Stauber, Michelle Fischbach, and Brad Finstead. First and foremost, congratulations on your confirmation for U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota. Given the inaction and improper handling of fraud by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and his administration, we are urging you as the new U.S. Attorney to open an investigation into reports that Minnesota taxpayer dollars are ending up in the hands of the Al-Shabaab terror network in Somalia. As you know, officials estimate $1 billion has been stolen under the Walz administration. Since 2020, we have written the Walz administration on numerous occasions, inquiring about the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme, as well as the fraud in housing stabilization services, child care assistance programs, and Minnesota's intensive development and behavioral intervention program, but all to no avail. Recently, it's come to our attention that millions of dollars in stolen funds have been sent back to Somalia, where they ultimately landed in the hands of terrorists. We are deeply disturbed by these reports. Specifically, it is alleged that Minnesota's Somali community, the largest in the nation, has been sending millions of dollars back via that network we discussed, where Al-Shabaab gets a big cut. These allegations follow criminal indictments for fraud against 6 members of the Somali community in September, resulting in hundreds of millions of dollars in fraudulent payments for the HSS program. Additionally, the majority of over 70 defendants involved in the $250 million Feeding Our Future fraud scheme were all part of the Somali community in Minnesota. One of these individuals was also indicted in connection with $14 million in EIDBI fraud scheme last year. It's enough excuse me, it is bad enough that these individuals are defrauding our state, taking services and funds away from children and the most vulnerable. But now there is good reason to believe that Minnesota taxpayer dollars are funding terrorists. These new allegations present not only a serious betrayal of taxpayer trust, but also a grave threat to our national security. Therefore, we request a thorough investigation into reports that these and other stolen funds have been sent back to Somalia. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I'm pretty sure that U.S. Attorney David Rosen is now going to pay attention to this because the lid has been blown off, and it's obvious that President Trump is very, very upset about it. Now, in addition to that, President Trump, I would like to just, for a moment, put your mind back into the comments I made earlier about Dominion and Smartmatic in Venezuela. President Trump went hard this weekend. He also stated explicitly, which I know a lot of people agree with him, we must focus all of our energy and might on election fraud. He actually shared an interview that Lara Logan did with an ex-CIA officer. President Trump made this statement on Sunday, and it's not just a statement to the people of the United States. It's a statement to the people in his administration. We've got to get tough on election security because without proper elections, everything is fake and gay and we can't trust any of it. And I know that a lot of people are still out there saying we've got to fix 2020. Guess what? It's 2025 and 2026 is right around the corner. 2028 is right after that. We've got to fix the whole kit and caboodle. And in doing so, we can show what happened in 2020. I believe we are getting to that point. It's all going to come at the same time. Nobody is going to look at a broken and failed election system and say, well, this is totally separate from what happened in 2020. They're all going to realize that it is all part of the exact same thing. So Trump reposted this interview that Lara Logan did. And of course, at the same time, he's got people sitting off the coast of Venezuela where the Smartmatic whistleblowers have identified the infrastructure which made it possible for 2020 to happen and the subsequent fraudulent elections as well. If we do not crack down on the election, if we don't bring safe and secure elections to the American people before the midterms in 2026, nobody is going to believe the results that we get. And I don't think that they should. In that whistleblower memo that was filed by former Trump attorney, journalist, author, and defendant in multiple cases, Christina Bobb, you remember that Democrat Attorney General's Association was paying Attorney General Chris Mays in Arizona $200,000 so that they could be the ones to prosecute the people that were allies of President Trump in those fake electors cases. The States United Democracy Center, a non-governmental organization that is made up of people that are Democrat acolytes. So Bob filed this memo with the Department of Justice in June, but she says there seemingly has been no movement from federal prosecutors in the meantime. However, there is uncertainty in the Department of Justice that they even want to take it up. Perhaps they're going to think differently about it now that President Trump has come forth and said, guess what? There's one thing that I want you to pay attention to, and that is election fraud. Now, Abe Hamada, as we spoke about last week, has also sent a letter to Pam Bondi calling for a formal investigation by the DOJ into the allegations that Christina Bobb has made. And he went back to his election in 2022, and he said, guess what? I was trying to talk about this back then. It's the same thing that happened to Kari Lake. I've made my position clear, and the White House has now said that they want to keep pursuing this. We have got to have action. During that election of 2022, he lost by 280 votes. And that election is what gave Attorney General Chris Mays the power to do what she did to the Trump electors. So now the Department of Justice, if they want to address the election situation, they've got to use every single tool in their disposal to go after the people who have subverted and destroyed our election system. I am looking forward to seeing what's actually going to come as a result of President Trump making this overt request. It's been 24 hours, so let's give it some time. Now, we've got to talk about another black pill, and that is the case against James Comey and Letitia James. Paul Sperry reported early this morning that Durham's former right-hand man actually is friends with James Comey. They go back a long ways, and it turns out he's also friends with James Comey's lead defense attorney. Jack Eckenrode is the man in question. He is a DOJ contractor, and at one time, he worked for Comey's lawyer, Patrick Fitzgerald, and after Comey was fired by Trump in 2017, he came out publicly and praised James Comey. Turns out that Jack Eckenrode is now a lead investigator on the Comey case. And it would appear that Mike Davis is so clear on his belief that James Comey and everybody else will face justice, that he's saying it's going to take place in the case in the Eastern District of Virginia, or it's going to take place in the Southern District of Florida. This is exactly what we've said here on this channel before. I believe that James Comey is going to be facing superseding indictments, and I think that his indictment in the Eastern District of Virginia was just the start. So the news is that the Clinton judge who was overseeing the motions by Letitia James and James Comey to have their cases dismissed on the technicality that Lindsay Halligan was improperly appointed has ruled in favor of James Comey and Letitia James. This is not a case that is over, though, and the language used in the dismissals is very, very important. So the judge that was chosen by the judge that had taken up the case against Letitia James and James Comey was appointed by the Clintons at one point in the past, and that judge has dismissed the case. However, it is dismissed without prejudice, which means that any other U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, or a special counsel, or anybody else with the attorney power working at the DOJ, they can refile these charges. I don't know if it's going to be an appeal so that a new lawyer will just take over the case, or if they're going to be forced to file this again. But a grand jury has already brought back these charges against James Comey and Letitia James because the evidence shows that they are guilty of what they are accused of. The appointment of Lindsay Halligan is a mere technicality, and it is not a deal breaker for this case. The Clinton judge overseeing this case is Cameron McGowan Curry. And Cameron McGowan Curry wrote two nearly identical dismissals for James and Comey. And it was pretty clear that she does not like Lindsay Halligan. This is a political decision. So she writes here in her decisions, for the reasons set forth above, it is hereby ordered and judged and adjudged that the appointment of Miss Halligan as interim U.S. attorney violated 28 U.S.C. 546 in the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. Number two, all actions flowing from Miss Halligan's defective appointment, including securing and signing Mr. Comey's indictment, were unlawful exercises of executive power and are hereby set aside. The Attorney General's attempts to ratify Miss Halligan's actions were ineffective and are hereby set aside. Mr. Comey's motion to dismiss the indictment is granted in accordance with this order. And in the other duplicate dismissal, it said, Miss James's motion to dismiss is also granted in accordance with this motion. But number 5, the indictment is dismissed without prejudice. Without prejudice, because Lindsay Halligan's appointment has nothing to do with the evidence that was used to obtain the grand jury indictments against them. If it was with prejudice, first of all, this ruling is already unprecedented, and it goes to show you that the deep state has their justice for when they want to go after us, and then they have their justice for when they want to protect each other. If she had dismissed these indictments with prejudice, then that would have been even more egregious, and it would have been completely outside of the boundaries of anything resembling a decision based in law. At least with this decision, she has the cover of Lindsay Halligan's appointment. So the power to appoint an interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 546 during the current vacancy lies with the district court, she says, until a U.S. attorney is nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. This also goes back to the Senate not doing their job. If Lindsey Halligan had been approved by the Senate, we wouldn't be having this discussion at all. So, undoubtedly, the government is going to bring this case back against James Comey and Letitia James. Whether the Senate gets their shit together and officially makes Lindsey Halligan the U.S. attorney because they vote on it and they get it taken care of, or Lindsey Halligan is appointed as a special prosecutor, which would give her the power that she needs. She just wouldn't be specifically for the Eastern District of Virginia. Or they have somebody else who is operating as a temporary appointment, brings the case again. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but I would assume that any one of those things is going to happen because the evidence is overwhelming in both of their cases. This was, again, merely a procedural challenge, and both Letitia James and James Comey are now doing laps saying that they've been exonerated. Now, neither of them have been exonerated. Anybody telling you that this case is dead and they are going to be free and they don't have to worry about facing charges in the future, they either are disingenuous, they are liars, or they are stupid because they don't know how the court works. So let's go ahead and take a look at Letitia James's comment first, and then we'll look at James Comey's comment. She said on X, "I am heartened by today's victory and grateful for the prayers and support I have received from around the country. I remain fearless in the face of these baseless charges as I continue fighting for New Yorkers every single day." There is not only the threat of this indictment coming back to bite Letitia James in the ass, but as I showed you last week, there's a lot of other indictments that could be coming as well. Now, James Comey ran and threw up a video on Instagram. We'll go ahead and watch that in a moment. Harmeet Dillon has also come forward and said that we are already putting together an appeal for these indictments because the dismissal was procedural. Dillon mentions, as I did, without prejudice, it means it can be brought again. Here is James Comey's statement in light of the indictment being dismissed on a procedural issue.
I'm grateful that the court ended the case against me, which was a prosecution based on malevolence and incompetence, and a reflection of what the Department of Justice has become under Donald Trump, which is heartbreaking. But I was also inspired by the example of the career people who refused to be part of this travesty. It cost some of them their jobs, which is painful, but it preserved their integrity, which is beyond price. And I know they will serve again. I was very lucky that some of the best lawyers in America stepped forward to represent me. I hope they serve as an example to more and more lawyers, especially at some of the big firms, to participate in protecting our liberty, protecting the rule of law. And my family and friends were always with me, and luckily for me, include some of those great lawyers. This case mattered to me personally, obviously, but it matters most because a message has to be sent that the President of the United States cannot use the Department of Justice to target his political enemies. I don't care what your politics are, you have to see that as fundamentally un-American and a threat to the rule of law that keeps all of us free.
He's such a smug son of a bitch, isn't he?
I know that Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude's going to be the same. I'm innocent, I am not afraid, and I believe in an independent federal judiciary, the gift from our founders that protects us from a would-be tyrant.
All right. Now, you already know the evidence against James Comey. Let me tell you another positive to this. The statute of limitations on those specific charges was about to run out on James Comey if those grand jury indictments had not been secured. Now, even though this case has been procedurally dismissed for the time being, the DOJ has a 6-month extension on that statute of limitations, which is a positive at the end of the day. But this case will be brought against both of them. Now, Sam Antar, of course, who initially put together some of the evidence, all of the evidence, really, against Letitia James, says Judge Walker dismissed on the appointments clause. That's it. Trump can appoint Lindsay Halligan as special counsel tomorrow. No Senate confirmation is needed. No appointments clause problem. This is actually how Durham, Hur, Weiss, and Smith were appointed. The dismissal is without prejudice. The evidence remains. The DOJ can re-indict immediately. Letitia James is not exonerated. She's not acquitted. Neither was James Comey. They are not vindicated. Her text message still says it looks suspicious. The fraud is still fraud. Now, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also commented shortly after this announcement by Judge Walker. Clinton appointed Judge Walker. And she says, everybody knows James Comey lied to Congress. It's as clear as day. This judge took an unprecedented action and chose to shield Comey and James for political reasons. Talk about political. Let's listen.
What I will say is that everybody knows that James Comey lied to Congress. It's as clear as day. And this judge took an unprecedented action to throw these cases out to shield James Comey and Letitia James from accountability based on a technical ruling. And the administration disagrees with that technical ruling. We believe the attorney in this case, Lindsay Halligan, is not only extremely qualified for this position, but she was in fact legally appointed. And I know the Department of Justice will be appealing this in very short order. So maybe James Comey should pump the brakes on his victory lap. What I will say is that
he should definitely pump his brakes. But, you know, James Comey's got to dive into the PSYOP, right? Because there are going to be people who don't understand how this works, and they're just going to buy into it. Now, let me tell you something else about the case in the Southern District of Florida. First of all, as we know, James Comey's case in the Eastern District of Virginia ultimately connects to the overarching grand conspiracy. So James Comey's indictments in EDVA can actually be rolled down into the Southern District of Florida. James Comey was subpoenaed, and he had a deadline to return that information. If it's not the 30th, I think that it was today. I talked about it last week, but I don't remember the date. But New York Times is reporting an additional grand jury also related to the Great Conspiracy and the investigation that is being led by U.S. Attorney Jason Redding Quinones is being impaneled in Fort Pierce, Florida, where one judge will preside over those proceedings. Guess who that judge is? It's Judge Eileen Cannon, the judge who oversaw the Mar-a-Lago documents case, who found that Jack Smith had actually been appointed improperly, who found that the case against President Trump was bogus, and she dismissed it. Now, you might remember that the media had viciously attacked Judge Eileen Cannon because she had been appointed by President Trump. She gave a lot of careful scrutiny, the best legal scrutiny, to that documents case, and she came away with the best choice and decision that she could make, because the government was hoping that Eileen Cannon would simply steamroll that case through, and, of course, it was the exact opposite. In September of 2022, Cannon wisely appointed a special master to oversee those sensitive documents that were taken from the Mar-a-Lago raid, because she expressed doubt over some of the claims that the Biden DOJ was making. Also, the Biden DOJ was leaking to the media. Now, of course, the Biden DOJ fought the appointment of that special master, and it was overruled on appeal. But she made the right call when she did that. And, of course, she very cautiously handled the case after the indictments were brought, because she was having problems with Jack Smith's legal team. They were very rude to her, and they treated her as if she was a mouthpiece for President Trump, even though she was simply operating within the boundaries of the law. Now, she actually almost kicked out one of Jack Smith's prosecutors because he was having essentially temper tantrums and he was being very rude to her. And she also earned the increased ire of legal experts because she attempted to hold Jack Smith's team to account. She was being harassed daily by people in the left, and she was even attacked by people on the right because they didn't think that she was ruling fast enough and good enough for President Trump. But at the end of the day, Eileen Cannon followed the law, and she came to the right decision. Eileen Cannon is the perfect example of a judge that we want on these cases because we have the benefit of the rule of law and evidence to suggest that this grand overarching conspiracy was initiated and engaged in by people like Jim Comey. So the indictments against Jim Comey in EDVA are not the end, they are only the beginning. And James Comey's case can be rolled down into the districts in Florida and the multiple grand juries that are currently ongoing. And this is going to end very badly for all of the people who engaged in this conspiracy. Now, I need to address a story that we talked about last week. I basically said it was fake news, but there was a report going around that the case against Adam Schiff had shifted from a case against Adam Schiff to a case against Ed Martin and Bill Pulte. Of course, the claims being made by MSDNC, a CIA mouthpiece, Ken Delanian, who is also a sycophant of John Brennan, was that the case in Maryland had actually turned into a case of mishandling of sensitive information by Ed Martin and Bill Pulte. They had allegedly shown mortgage documents to people who weren't supposed to see them. But Chad Mizell, who is a former DOJ attorney, and he worked for President Trump's first administration, he says in the reaction to that story that this is the wrong take. The take being that the DOJ is going after Ed Martin and Bill Pulte, that the DOJ is not going after Adam Schiff. He says wrong. In any investigation, and particularly in a high-profile prosecution, like the prosecution of Adam Schiff, you make sure that all your bases are covered. This means knowing where the initial referral and all of the evidence came from, which means that you're going to ask the questions that Ken Delanian was suggesting equal the DOJ going after Pulte and Martin. You need to know who is talking to who, because the defense is going to ask for that information, and you can't afford any surprises. The DOJ is not going after Ed Martin. The DOJ is doing the smart thing and covering its bases before any big indictment. My prediction, Schiff better lawyer up. Now, Ed Martin responded to this, and he makes it very, very clear. It is always difficult to comment on any ongoing investigation. But Chad Mizell knows of what he speaks, meaning Adam Schiff is about to be indicted. The DOJ is not investigating Ed Martin or Bill Pulte. The DOJ is merely doing its due diligence to ensure that any indictments that come against Adam Schiff are going to stick, and Adam Schiff is going to be held to account. I love it, and I'm very excited, again, to see what's happening and where this case is going, because he deserves to be held to account and to go to prison, in my opinion. All right, now, before we continue, I have a quick message from our friends over here on Rumble. So, you guys may be somebody who struggles with high blood sugar or A1C. If you or someone you love struggles with that, you need to listen to this. It's well known that the expensive medications and the popular shots that people are taking have dangerous side effects. And Creator's Bounty has developed the perfect alternative to pharmaceuticals. It's an herbal supplement, and it's called Elohitrim. Elohitrim is a 100% natural formula that's proven to dramatically lower your blood sugar and A1C. It uses 7 healthy ingredients. There's no stimulants. There's no junk. These are 7 ingredients that would cost you over $150 if you took them all individually. But the best part is that it's obviously going to be a lot less expensive, and there are no bad side effects. You only get good ones. We're talking your sugar cravings being completely gone, inflammation reduced, stable energy all day long without any crashes. And seriously, most people are getting better results than they did on the harsh medications, but they don't have all the risks and the side effects. Elohe Trim is made in the USA at an FDA-registered facility. It's fully tested and backed by a no-questions-asked 90-day money-back guarantee. And the friendly folks at Creators Bounty offer fast and free shipping 5 days a week from here in the United States in Oklahoma. So you can use that QR code right there, and you can get up to 50% off when you go to creatorsbounty.com/rumble. And you can also use the link that you see in the chat as well. So thank you very much to Elohe Trim. Appreciate it. Also, S2G109 says, Zach, we need a good laugh after listening to Comey's crap. All right, let's do that before we move into the next section about sedition, because President Trump went after, well, he was on doing sedition hunters this weekend again. Very, very exciting. Okay. A grandmother wearing an inflatable penis costume in Alabama at a Trump protest gets arrested. I'm all for getting perverts off the street. Okay, here we go.
I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. If my kids had to come by and see this, how would you explain it to them?
Are you recording?
I am recording. I'm recording right here. I am telling you right now, if my kids had to come by and see this, I would like to hear how you would explain to my children what you're supposed to be.
What a pun is?
I want you.
Understand what a pun is?
Let me get another unit over here. I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me why.
Being detained is not. I'm going to go ahead and go this way.
You're being detained, miss.
Whoa. I'm telling you right now. I am telling you right now.
Sir, leave him alone.
Turn over. On your belly. On your belly.
Walking away.
On your belly.
Absurd.
I told
You can't even tell where her arms are.
her to take it off. Give me your arm. Give me your arm.
She's gonna take it off.
Give me your arm. I want your arm now. I need somebody.
Walking away. Trying to behave.
Got it. Yep.
15 seconds and he was walking away.
Other arm. Let me have your other arm. Thank you. This is a family town, and I'm not going to have somebody out here dressed like this. You understand? I would hate for her grandkids to see her like this.
Grandkid, get out. That owner.
That's a shame.
I am an ASL interpreter and my hands are killing me.
Turn around. Turn around. Scoot back in. Scoot back in. Scoot back in.
I am trying.
He's going to help you. The officer is going to help you.
I can't.
You got to get this suit off. What's your name?
Aunt Tifa.
Aunt Tifa, can you tell me where the zipper to this is?
Oh, wait. What is that? My American flag shoes. What? I'm an American? I'm an American. Who knew?
Hurry up.
Who knew? I have rights. Who knew? A single tax colony. The children have been cheering me on. I walked from
No
Subway.
child's going to cheer you on dressed like
Yes,
a wiener.
they did.
That's because they're children and they're as immature as you are.
Oh my gosh. Let me go through the thread and see if there's a mugshot. I don't think so. I don't think so. Let me look. Okay, it happened on October 18th, but I don't know what city. Don't know what city. Let's see. Grandma arrested dressed like a penis. 10/18. Let's see if we can. We got body cam footage. Here is the TMZ article. No, we have no. They might not have actually arrested her. They might have just taken her off the street. Let's see. Looks like a lot of people have the footage, but nobody has her nobody has her mugshot. Oh my god. That's so funny. Tree huggers, you say someone walked me off the ledge. Did you miss the first half of the show, my friend? You should definitely rewind and watch the first half of the show. All right, let's talk about the seditionists. So, I mean, I gave a lot of commentary on this last week. We all know what they were trying to do. They put Alyssa Slotkin first, former CIA operative, still CIA, just placed within the Senate. And another former CIA agent says that Alyssa Slotkin knew exactly what she was doing, and I know because I was CIA. He actually replied to her, and he said, his name is Brian Dean Wright. He says, "Hi, we worked at the CIA together. Your video for intel and military personnel was seditious. It was a call to ignore the president of the United States. Wrapped in a wink, make it lawful. It was propaganda. You know what you were doing, and so do I." We don't need to watch the video again, but here is the interview, a clip from the interview with Jesse Waters where he talks about this.
"I intend to uphold my obligation, my oath, and to lead. Don't give up the ship."
And I refuse to be
Oh, okay, so this is them now replying to President Trump calling them seditious.
intimidated out of defending the country I love.
Remember your oath. Follow lawful orders. Refuse unlawful ones.
Threats don't deter me. I will never give up the ship.
All right, Brian, these Democrats, is this seditious what they're doing?
It is. And look, we need to be very, very clear about Slotkin and who she is. So she knew what she was doing when she put that together. As a former CIA operations officer, my job was to go out in the field and collect the intel, conduct the operation. Her job as an analyst was to figure out whether or not things like propaganda operations were successful, if they were effective.
So she's got a little bit of background.
So she has seen her fair share of propaganda operations, and she knows how to pull those off and make them effective. So if you think about it through that lens, if you watch the video again, one of the first things that she and the others do is they establish credibility and authority. They talk about who they are, working for the CIA and working for the military. They then move into the next phase of the propaganda message, which is there's a crisis. They create a crisis for the listeners inside the FBI and the CIA and the military. And they say that there is a threat, not just abroad, like we might face with China or Russia or Al-Qaeda, but inside of the country. The threat is here. Who's that threat? Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is the threat. Okay, so I feel like we've well established that these people knew exactly what they were doing. So we don't need to watch the whole thing. But other than President Trump, now others within Congress are also coming forward, including Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso. He joined Maria Bartiromo to talk about this and other things. And he was asked, what is your reaction to your colleagues on the left telling U.S. military members to ignore President Trump's directive? He said, what they're doing is wrong, and I believe it is dangerous. They have no right to tell members of the military to disobey. We are talking about active duty military to disobey orders from their commanding officers. It is up to the Supreme Court to decide what is constitutional, not 6 Democrats on social media. I think the president is absolutely right to be requiring and talking about legal responsibility and about them being held accountable. These are the same Democrats who have been doing everything they can in the last 10 months to undermine President Trump, undermine the Republican Party and its efforts. So they were fully aware of what this would do. All they need to do is cause a little bit of dissent among the ranks. They literally spoke to every single armed branch of the armed forces, with the exception of the Marines, and even began with the Central Intelligence Agency, which is, in my opinion, the backbone of the deep state. And they are not allowed to operate in the United States, which means that they would be undermining from outside the United States, which makes it even that much more difficult. They didn't go to the Marines because they know the Marines are not going to listen to this bullshit. However, all it takes is a couple of less intelligent members of, say, the Army or any other branch of the military to say, wow, my congressman said I shouldn't follow an illegal order. Not that these guys have not already been taught what an illegal order is or how they're supposed to deal with it, but they have the authority from their congressperson telling them that they should not respond to what President Trump is doing. And they make it appear as if President Trump is pitting the military against the American people. Absolutely not what's happening. So President Trump, after his initial statements about sedition, went on to directly drive that point home again over the weekend. He went on Truth Social, and first he posted, "It was sedition at the highest level, and sedition is a major crime. There can be no other interpretation of what they said. It wasn't and never will be. It was sedition at the highest level, and sedition is a major crime. There can be no other interpretation. Many great legal scholars agree that the Democrat traitors told the military to disobey my orders. As president, they have committed a crime of serious proportion." And, of course, in a recent video message to members of the military, that is exactly what they did. They used their credentials to establish authority, and then they gave them this directive. The president and others are perceiving this in the way that it has been defined, and in a way that I believe these Democrat members of Congress thought they would be able to get away with because they were careful with their language. And, of course, they couched it within the authority of refusing illegal orders. But as you know, they never defined any possible illegal orders that President Trump ever may have given, because he has never given an illegal order. In addition to calling that out over the weekend, President Trump then went on a meme posting spree from Spiritual Street Fighter 17. Each and every one of these 4 memes are directly themed from the drops. First, we have a Guy Fawkes meme, which says, "Nothing can stop what is coming." President Trump retruthed that. He knew exactly what he was posting. Then he reposts this one, which shows President Trump, a storm, and it says, "Time to obliterate the deep state," and it says, "Do it Q," right on his suit. Then he posts this one, which is President Trump with the Q plus on his lapel, and it says tick-tock, which means time is running out. And then finally, "Remember your oath," which ironically is essentially what the Democrats said as well. President Trump did not just choose these memes, and it's also notable that he posted these right after Marjorie Taylor Greene came out and said, "There is no plan, there is no 4D chess, nothing is happening." I don't think that she could be any more wrong. Now, the others who are speaking out from the Democratic caucus, I believe, are starting to get a little bit nervous because President Trump has leaned into this sedition bent as heavily as he has. We've had a couple of new statements from some of those seditionists themselves, and Amy Klobuchar actually is asked about it in an interview over the weekend as well. Now, what's been amazing to me is that members of the mainstream media have pushed back so hard against these people and called them out for what they've actually done. Let's go ahead and take a listen to Amy Klobuchar and see if she says anything of substance.
The Schumer shutdown.
Spoiler alert, she doesn't, but that's part of the fun. God, butter is so good. I love eating butter.
I wonder, do you know what the specific illegal acts are that your Democratic colleagues were referring to there?
Well, it's very clear in this code for the military that you cannot follow unlawful orders. And, you know, that would be, I'll just use an example. Some of the judges have now found in certain cities that it is not legal to send in the National Guard. And those National Guard members have come home. Some of them are still there.
Every single one of those cases is currently in the courts being adjudicated. And nobody has found that President Trump is giving illegal orders. Amy Klobuchar does not know of that which she speaks.
But if their commander were to tell them, hey, go out on the streets and do this and that, that's not following the order that is in law. So I just use that example. I'm sure my colleagues would have others.
Yeah, they don't have any examples because, again, there have been no illegal orders. Now, Alyssa Slotkin was forced to actually admit that over the weekend in her own interview. And of course, she compared President Trump to Hitler. She invoked Nuremberg, and she actually invoked the film A Few Good Men. I think it's rather fitting that an agent of the Central Intelligence Agency would cite movies when giving her rationale for why she said what she said. Let's take a listen here. Okay, so this is, again, their revolt. Here is Alyssa Slotkin admitting that President Trump has never issued an illegal order. If you're right after this, I got to get through it.
Let's talk right now. Do you believe President Trump has issued any illegal orders?
To my knowledge, I am not aware of things that are illegal, but certainly there are some legal gymnastics that are going on with these Caribbean strikes and everything related to Venezuela.
So as I started the show with, it really comes down to what's happening in the Caribbean and Venezuela. And what is that again? The administration stopping dangerous drugs from being imported into the United States of America illegally. Cocaine, which has traditionally been the biggest moneymaker outside of human trafficking and weapons trafficking for the Central Intelligence Agency. She pointed to the Nuremberg trials, where, of course, Nazi leaders were tried for war crimes against humanity. She suggested that members of our military, if they did not stand up to illegal orders, they could find themselves in Nuremberg trials. Think about the less intelligent, left-leaning members of the military who would listen to the words of a sitting U.S. senator and internalize those words and think to themselves, oh my gosh, I don't want to end up on a Nuremberg trial, so maybe I should just stand up to President Trump and tell them that we're not going to follow orders. Imagine how disastrous it would be if there was a cascading effect, or say a high-ranking military official who went to people under his command and said, President Trump is giving us illegal orders, so we're not going to follow what he says, and we're actively going to rebel. We're going to essentially commit sedition. Only it's not sedition because these are illegal orders. And then she pointed to the film A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. That has nothing to do with what's happening in real life. Alyssa Slotkin here in this clip mentions A Few Good Men, just in a stunning display of manipulation.
It does imply that the president is having illegal orders, which you have not seen.
I think for us, it was just a statement widely, right? We say very quickly and to all the folks who come to us.
Believe me, we had our lawyers look at every word in that script before we read it. That's what she's saying.
This is the process. Go to your JAG officer, ask them for explanation, for top cover, for their view on things. We do that on a case-by-case basis, but we wanted to speak directly to the volumes of people who had come to us on this.
And I, for one, do not believe that volumes of enlisted military men and women have reached out to Alyssa Slotkin or any of her ilk in that video and suggested that they were getting illegal orders. Again, there is a chain of command and a very specific process for determining if you believe that you have been given an illegal order. And that will be addressed well before you have an opportunity to contact your senator back home in Washington, D.C.
And it is very clear that no one should follow an illegal order, but it's very murky when you look at what is an illegal order. And if you go into morally, ethically, that's a pretty tough thing to look at and say, how do I navigate this?
Look, if you're going back to Nuremberg, right, that, well, they told me to do it, that's why I murdered people, is not an excuse. If you look at popular culture, there's you watch, A Few Good Men, we have plenty of examples since World War II in Vietnam.
There are not plenty of examples because the United States government is not just handing out illegal orders on the regular. And Alyssa Slotkin is obviously appealing to the denser people of her base.
Where people were told to follow illegal orders, and they did it, and they were prosecuted for it. So the best thing for people to do is go to their JAG officer, their local law enforcement or a legal officer in their unit, and ask for some explanation, ask for help. And that's what we've been advising people to do.
All right. So Alyssa Slotkin is in legal jeopardy as a result of this. Jason Crow, I believe, is also feeling the stress because here he is discussing the idea of these illegal orders, and he's on Face the Nation with CBS. Again, they are pushing back on him. I am shocked by all of the pushback from the media.
Let's get to the content of what you had in that video you released, because there are also 15 House Republicans who are also veterans who released a video, including a retired 3-star Marine Corps General, Jack Bergman. Take a listen to this.
Troops, listen up. Any service member who refuses a lawful order is subject to court-martial for violating the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
We study what's lawful and what's not lawful, and the Democrats stunt insinuating that they're illegal or unconstitutional orders. It's downright dangerous.
It is corrosive. It is meant to weaken our country and weaken the military.
How do you respond to these allegations from your colleagues, fellow veterans, that what you have put out there is weakening and corrosive to the military?
Well, these unfortunately are some of Trump's core supporters that are
He's such a weenie.
rallying behind the president, and they know better. They know exactly the difference between lawful versus unlawful. We were very clear in the video that what we're talking about is unlawful orders.
Again, we had our lawyers look at that script for about a day before we went on record and used those words. We were very specific in the language that we chose.
You have the president's spokesperson going into a press conference this past week and saying that we called for people to disobey lawful orders. They're simply lying because the truth is unacceptable to them. It's unacceptable. We wanted to start a conversation, and we did, about the dangerous rhetoric this president is using and the threats that he's made to use our military in an unlawful way.
Never happened. President Trump has not threatened to use the military in any unlawful manner. And if you look at the specific deployments of the National Guard throughout the country, they have been deployed for very specific reasons. And they have gone into details. We've talked about those details before they even went and deployed to those places about the very specific ways that they would be used. They're not going out there to perform police duties. They're not going out there to perform crowd control. They are going with specifically the intention of protecting federal resources, which have been attacked by radical left-wing terrorists who have pled guilty in a court of law for their vicious military-style attacks on U.S. government facilities. We had at least one ICE agent that was shot in the neck and is lucky to be alive.
Because,
what?
Well, send troops into Chicago, send troops into polling stations, kill terrorists' families, arrest and execute.
Did you hear her? She said he hasn't done those things. He hasn't done those things. He's never said those things.
Execute members of Congress, shoot peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square. Need I go on? He has a history.
None of it happened. Jason, whatever his last name is, he is completely freaking out, in my opinion.
Of doing this. And if we wait until the moment that he gives a manifestly unlawful order to a young soldier, then we have failed them. We have to start that conversation now and get people thinking about the distinction, which is exactly what we did.
Yeah. So those.
Yeah, those things have not happened. Have not happened, Jason Crow. All right, now, President Trump had mentioned that the military was going to be looking into this, and the Department of War earlier today announced that they are actually considering taking my advice. I'm sure they didn't get it from me. They probably thought about this on their own, but to recall Democrat Senator Mark Kelly to active duty so that he can be court-martialed because he urged the military to defy President Trump's orders. This would be the ultimate for all of these people. Every single one of them could be recalled so that they could be court-martialed. Now, the message from these sitting members of Congress was clear. Although they used language to make it appear as if they weren't suggesting that members of the military defy President Trump's lawful orders, they wanted these people to make the manifest decision on their own without being legal experts and without having perhaps even the schooling that would allow them to do it on their own, to simply make the arbitrary decision that President Trump was asking for unlawful orders. Now, the Department of War put this statement out. The Department of War has received some serious allegations of misconduct against Captain Mark Kelly, U.S. Navy retired, In accordance with the UCMJ 10 U.S.C. 688 and other applicable regulations, a thorough review of these allegations has been initiated to determine further actions, which may include a recall to active duty for court-martial proceedings or administrative procedures. This matter will be handled in compliance with military law, ensuring due process and impartiality. Further official comments will be limited to preserve the integrity of the proceedings. The Department of War reminds all individuals that military retirees remain subject to the UCMJ for applicable offenses, and federal laws such as 18 U.S.C. 2387 prohibit actions intended to interfere with the loyalty, morale, or good order and discipline of the armed forces. We actually went over this very code on Friday night on Onlylands. And it goes to show you that these people should have known better. Whether or not they suggested that members of the military defy lawful orders, 18 U.S.C. 2387 prohibits actions intended to interfere with the loyalty, morale, or good order and discipline of every branch of the armed services. All service members are reminded that they have a legal obligation under the UCMJ to obey lawful orders, and that orders are presumed to be lawful. A service member's personal philosophy does not justify or excuse the obedience of an otherwise lawful order. Now, Pete Hegseth also commented on it. The video made by the seditious six, this is the Secretary of War, was despicable, reckless, and false. Encouraging our warriors to ignore the orders of their commanders undermines every aspect of good order and discipline, meaning they willfully violated the statute that I just read to you. Their foolish screed sows doubt and confusion, which only puts our warriors in danger. 5 of the 6 individuals in that video do not fall under Department of War jurisdiction. 1 is CIA, and 4 are former military but not retired, so they are no longer subject to the UCMJ. However, Mark Kelly is a retired Navy commander. He is still subject to the UCMJ, and he knows that. As was announced, the department is reviewing his statements and actions, which were addressed directly to all troops, while explicitly using his rank and service affiliation, lending the appearance of authority to his words. Kelly's conduct brings discredit upon the armed forces and will be addressed appropriately. Now, of course, Mark Kelly himself has also come forward with a response, and he is not happy. He released a statement after Pete Hegseth and the Department of War announced they had launched a review of these allegations of misconduct, which he clearly committed, because he urged members of the military to defy President Trump's orders. And at a minimum, the statements were intended to interfere with the loyalty, morale, and good order of the military. So, let's see. Here is his statement. When I was 22 years old, I commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy and swore an oath to the Constitution. I upheld that oath through flight school, multiple deployments on the USS Midway, 39 combat missions in Operation Desert Storm, test pilot school, 4 space shuttle flights at NASA, and every day since I retired, which I did after my wife Gabby was shot in the head while serving her constituents. In combat, I had a missile blow up next to my jet and flew through anti-aircraft fire to drop bombs on enemy targets. At NASA, I launched on a rocket, commanded the space shuttle, and was part of the recovery mission that brought home the bodies of my astronaut classmates who died on Columbia. I did all of this in service to my country that I love and has given me so much. Secretary Hegseth's tweet is the first I heard of this. I also saw the president's posts saying I should be arrested, hanged, and put to death. That isn't what the president said, but, so what? If this is meant to intimidate me and other members of Congress from doing our jobs and holding this administration accountable, it won't work. I've given too much to this country to be silenced by bullies who care more about their own power than protecting the Constitution. Well, actually, this is protection of the Constitution, because the chain of command has to remain intact if we are to be able to successfully support and defend the Constitution and protect the homeland of the United States of America. Now, Wounds R Us says, I heard earlier that Maduro may be the leader of the cartel, which officially he is, but begs the question, are the minions CIA, much like the poppy fields? Yes, I don't know if you missed the first portion of the show, but that was the point of what I was talking about. Maduro may be the leader of Cartel de los Sols in name only, and it would not surprise me if we find out that ultimately it is the CIA which are running the drug production facilities and operating essentially as the power of a narco state as they are, which would, of course, give credence to the idea that Maduro really does want to be set free by having these organizations removed and allowing the nation to become much more than simply a narco state. So, Karoline Leavitt also has addressed Captain Mark Kelly directly because he is accusing the administration of attempting to intimidate him, but she says that he is attempting to intimidate 1.3 million active duty service members by calling for sedition against President Trump. I believe that Mark Kelly will be recalled to active duty and will be court-martialed, at which point I would imagine he will probably be stripped of his Senate commissions and he will be taken away from his committee positions. They will probably have to hold a special election. Let's listen to Karoline Leavitt.
The White House is supportive of the Department of War's investigation into Senator Mark Kelly, and I think what Senator Mark Kelly was actually trying to do was intimidate the 1.3 million active duty service members who are currently serving in our United States Armed Forces with that video that he and his Democrat colleagues put out. Senator Mark Kelly well knows the rules of the military and the respect that one must have for the chain of command, and that all lawful orders are presumed to be legal by our service members. You can't have a functioning military if there is disorder and chaos within the ranks, and that's what these Democrat members were encouraging. It's very clear, and not a single one of them, since they've been pressed by the media, and I'll give you guys credit for that, can point to a single illegal order that this administration has given down, because it does not exist. They knew what they were doing in this video, and Senator Mark Kelly and all of them should be held accountable for that.
Now, Karoline Leavitt speaks for the president, and she, as the official press secretary, giving us the line and the statements of the administration, is simply backing up what President Trump believes. I believe she believes this, of course, but this is the official position of the administration. Mark Kelly has violated the UCMJ. Mark Kelly should be court-martialed. Mark Kelly should go to prison. This is not about intimidating people for free speech. He knew better by using his rank and his position as a lever of authority to intimidate and to influence the minds of active duty U.S. service members, especially members of the U.S. Navy, which is where he served. Millerbiz says, Trump continues to exceed my expectations. What a great president. Anyone Somalian who doesn't love this country should leave now. Absolutely agree with you. And I think that, President Trump also seemed to signal that he agrees with us that people who are naturalized American citizens should not be able to hold elected office. That's something that I have said for a very long time. If you come to the United States of America, you gain your citizenship, then I don't think that you should be able to run for office. Maybe your children, because they are natural-born American citizens, should be able to hold office. But I don't think that's something that we should do anymore, because especially in the instance of Somalians, they have shown time and time again that their loyalty lies in Somalia. Their loyalty is to Somalians. If they are elected, as Ilhan Omar was, to represent a section of the state of Minneapolis, her loyalty is not to Minneapolis or to the United States of America. It is to the people that she calls her brothers and sisters, based upon their nation of birth. Now, Democrat Senator Ruben Gallego, who many people believe stole the election from Kari Lake in 2022, has also responded. Now, he is a former Marine, and of course, he got a little bit hot under the collar in discussing what the administration is talking about, specifically Mark Kelly being recalled and tried under the UCMJ.
This is fucking insane. We should all point out how fucking insane this is. Hey, this is Ruben Gallego. I'm traveling through Arizona right now, and I just received the news that the Department of Defense is starting an investigation against my seatmate, Mark Kelly, this is fucking insane. We should all point out how fucking insane this is. And, you know, these guys are trying to say that they're not acting like fascists, they're not trying to give as much power to this president as a king, then they should stop acting like it. Mark Kelly's a patriot. There's no reason why they're going after him. He was doing his duty and just reminding people about their rights as service members. And, you know, Secretary Hegseth, all these guys, fuck you guys. You're not going to be able to scare us. We have a right to defend the Constitution of the United States. We have a right to tell other service members that they have a right to ignore illegal orders, and you're not going to be able to intimidate us.
Yeah, nobody is trying to intimidate. We're just trying to keep that order because, of course, as I've said time and time again, what they did was sow disorder. I wonder why it was that Ruben Gallego didn't join them in their video, because he was a former member of the Marines. So maybe there's a reason why he didn't choose to take part in that video. But as it stands right now, he is not among them, and so he's not at danger of having the same legal jeopardy as the others. Now, that will wrap it up for our section on the seditionists. But we have a new bombshell story, which is exposing the true nature of Campbell's soup. Never thought that I was going to be saying that in 2025, but what we have here is a secret audio recording of a company vice president. In this recording, he mocks poor people. He says that Campbell's soup is essentially trash, that it's unhealthy, and most importantly, that they are using bioengineered meat in their soup. Now, I can tell you that is actually illegal down here in Florida, and Ron DeSantis has announced that there is already an investigation that has begun into Campbell's soup. It's likely that that investigation will spill over into other states, and there may even be something at the federal level. But this is a story that comes from Newsweek. There's actually an employment discrimination lawsuit and a retaliation lawsuit out of the Wayne County Circuit Court. This was filed on November 20th. A former security analyst named Robert Garza said he was fired for revealing this unseemly information that we're about to hear coming from this senior executive. So in his lawsuit, Garza says that he gave interviews with the local media to talk about these claims, and this recorded meeting happened between Garza and Martin Bally, who is the Campbell's vice president and chief information security officer. Garza says that he met Bally at a restaurant in late 2024. He believed that he was going to be discussing his salary. And while he was there, Bally begins mocking the customers of Campbell's Soup. And this is where he disclosed some of this disturbing information. He said, "We have shit for effing poor people. Who buys our shit? I don't buy Campbell's products barely anymore. It's not healthy now that I know what the F's in it. Bioengineered meat. I don't want to eat a piece of effing chicken that came from a 3D printer." Absolutely shocking. Let's take a listen.
A former Campbell's Soup Company employee is taking legal action against the food giant, and he's making some explosive allegations about one of its top executives. Good evening, and thanks for joining us at 6. I'm Ty Steele.
I'm Kimberly Gill. Those allegations are now at the center of a lawsuit claiming the company's vice president went on an hour-long tirade attacking the company's products and employees before taking aim at its customers.
And the former employee recorded it all. Eric Erickson shares that recording and what the company is saying about it.
We have shit for poor people. Who buys our shit?
And that's just part of an over an hour-long rant, says former security analyst for Campbell's, Robert Garza of Monroe.
Personally, I don't eat canned soup. It's the kind of thing that I would have on hand for like an emergency situation. I love making soup. I don't make it nearly as often as I used to. Lisa loves my soup, but I credit myself with being a bit of a chef. And so I love making homemade soups. But I will never eat Campbell's soup ever again if I can help it.
I don't buy Campbell's products barely anymore. It's so healthy. Now that I know what the in it, even in a can of soup, I look at it, look at bioengineered meat. I don't want to eat a a piece of chicken that came from a 3D printer? You?
The recording allegedly of Campbell's VP.
As far as I know, they have never admitted to using anything other than whole chicken. The idea that they're printing chicken and putting it in their soup, this could lead to a lot more than simply this guy's lawsuit.
And Chief Information Security Officer Martin Bally.
He has no filter.
Bally, along with another supervisor and Campbell Soup Company, named in a lawsuit filed Thursday. The suit claiming Bally made racist remarks, admits to coming to work high, and Garza fired for coming forward.
What do you think about the things that he was saying?
Oh, just pure disgust.
Garza says he usually worked remotely for Campbell's headquarters, based in Camden, New Jersey. But thinking he'd be discussing his salary with Bally, he says the recording taken in person at a restaurant.
They couldn't think for the themselves. I'm like, you dumb
Garza says he felt sick after the rant, deciding to go to his direct supervisor in January, keeping the recordings to himself.
He had never had any disciplinary action. They had never written him up for poor work performance.
Garza says no one at Campbell's ever followed up, and it's taken him 10 months to find a new job, calling the way the canned soup company handled it simply terrible.
They have a motto, like we treat you like family, here at Campbell's, come work for us, we treat our employees like family. That's not the case.
We did just receive a statement from Campbell's that says, quote, if accurate, the comments in the recording are unacceptable. They do not reflect our values and the culture of our company. We are actively investigating this matter. We've also reached out directly to Martin Bally.
However, no direct comment on whether or not they are using 3D printed meat. Garza also said Bally uttered racist comments about Indians. He said that effing Indians don't know an effing thing, like they couldn't think for their effing selves. Thank God Garza kept a copy of this recording for several weeks before reporting Bally to his supervisor, but then, of course, he didn't say anything when he was fired as well. Once he did get fired, obviously he knew this was going to be a pretty big deal. His attorney, Zachary Runyon, said Garza believed he was acting to protect his coworkers who were the subjects of these alleged comments. He was really sticking up for other people. According to the lawsuit, Garza was terminated January 30th, roughly 20 days after raising his concern. Runyon said Garza had no record of disciplinary action. He had never been written up for performance issues. And Campbell's says if the recording is legitimate, the comments are unacceptable. Mr. Bally is on temporary leave while we conduct this investigation. They also said, we are proud of the food we make, the people who make it, and the high-quality ingredients we use. The comments on the recording are not only inaccurate, they are patently absurd. Keep in mind, the alleged comments are made by an IT person who has nothing to do with how we make our food. Well, any way you slice it, it doesn't look good for Campbell's, and it certainly doesn't look good for Bally. All right, one final message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, let's be clear. Cryptocurrency is no longer emerging. It's here. And the latest move cements that reality in the biggest way yet. Because Trump Media Group just inked a massive $6.4 billion deal with Crypto.com, which is the world's top crypto platform. They're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion in Crow, the powerhouse token that fuels fast, low-fee, DeFi, and staking rewards, and real-world perks like cashback on your spends to launch America's first Crow treasury. When it's done, this new company will be the biggest Crow holder out there. If you want in the action, you got to head to Crypto.com today and grab some Crow. Let's make crypto great again. You can also use the QR code that you see on screen or the link that you have in the chat. Thank you very much to Crypto.com and Rumble. Let's see. Oh, I see people in the chat over on YouTube saying, I want a refund for all the soup I have in my pantry. I don't blame you. If I had Campbell's soup in the pantry, I would be calling them too. All right. Now, also, let me say thank you to Filter Dog, who says, did the DOJ get the files they wanted from Comey? They would have gotten his response to the subpoena in Florida. That's why I say there is still a lot to come in regards to that. If he did not reply to the subpoena, I would imagine he understands the legal jeopardy he would be in, and the DOJ will certainly be filing something related to that in court, waiting to see what happens. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Filter Dog also says AG Bondi confirms an appeal is underway to ensure James Comey and Letitia James are held accountable for their crimes. I would expect nothing less. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 more cookies. And Filter Dog says it was never about getting Comey. It was about getting materials for other cases. I would disagree with that because it's not only about getting Comey. It's about making sure that James Comey faces justice for the part that he played in the overarching conspiracy, which the DOJ currently has the grand juries for in the state of Florida. James Comey is part of the grand conspiracy. So by virtue of that fact, it is about getting Comey. It's just not only about getting Comey. 123 SKG says, did you see the Rick Grinnell interview about the Kennedy Center? It was great hearing him address the lies with Maria Bartiromo, who was on the board. So I haven't seen the interview, but I saw that there was some reporting on it. I haven't really heard any bad stuff about the Kennedy Center, only the good stuff that I've heard from the administration. So I didn't look at it too hard. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Boys Blanc says they said they would have their back. In other words, no matter the discipline, we will forgive. Underlying, they say if you don't do our defined unconstitutional, we will prosecute you. It's sedition. Absolutely 100% sedition. Filter Dog, is the Campbell's Soup fake meat story true? Well, according to Campbell's, no. But I don't know what their process is, and I would have to imagine there's probably going to be an investigation. As I said, in Florida, it is illegal to use bioengineered meat and serve it to people. So Florida is investigating. If it's true, Florida will get to the bottom of it. Filter Dog, thank you for Jerome. And then Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Okay. All right. Now, President Trump posted a reply to Representative Tim Burchett's interview that we actually featured a couple of months back, where Tim Burchett spoke to Benny Johnson, and he said that the Biden administration was selling pardons, and most importantly, that NGO money was being funneled back to politicians. NGO money, in my opinion, was likely also being used to fund the smuggling operations that we've spoken about, because the CIA is working through the State Department with these NGOs to destabilize nations, governments, create fake political movements, and then also they have got money that is being used to line the pockets of corrupt politicians. But Tim Burchett had said at that time there's got to be 8,000 freaking pardons. Joe couldn't remember what he had for breakfast. He couldn't remember where the dadgum bathroom was, and he's reviewed 8,000 pardons. Give me a freaking break. So President Trump didn't make any commentary on this video, but he shared the entire section where Tim Burchett talks about this. President Trump is likely pointing to every single one of those points, not simply the pardons, but definitely the NGO money laundering operation that was pushing cash into the pockets of corrupt politicians back in Washington, D.C., because Tim Burchett said almost 1,000 NGOs working out of Afghanistan, they've told us we've given them close to $5 billion, and we're still doing it because it goes to the NGOs. The Democrats fought that amendment that we added NGOs into the bill. Why? Because there's 1,000 NGOs, and you know good and well that money is coming right back into Washington. I believe that President Trump is aware of this, and that's why he shared this video. Now, it is also highly notable that on the same day President Trump shares that video, the State Department announces that they are now investigating mass migration as a potential human rights violation. So denouncing mass migration as an existential threat to Western civilization, the State Department announced this on Friday and said that they will be blowing the whistle on nations that make catering to migrants more important than the welfare of their citizens. Who was driving the mass migration? Well, it was the NGOs that Tim Burchett made mention of in that interview with Benny Johnson. So the State Department is going to be looking into diversity, equity, and inclusion policies of other nations as potential human rights violations. Nations that fund abortions or assist in mass migration could find themselves labeled as violators of human rights. This is coming from a senior State Department official who said this new fight against mass migration is a tool to change the behavior of governments. The United States remains committed to the Declaration of Independence's recognition definition that all men are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. Those rights were given to us by God, our Creator, and not by governments, the official said. Now, the State Department's official X account posted on Friday that mass migration poses an existential threat to Western civilization and undermines the stability of key American allies. Today, the State Department instructed U.S. embassies to report on the human rights implications and public safety impacts of mass migration. Mass migration is a human rights concern. What happens with mass migration? It creates an influx of crimes into the nations where it happens. It creates an opportunity for human and child trafficking. It creates a situation where people are abducted for their organs. There are so many different aspects of human rights violations that take place through the process of mass migration being paid for by NGOs, which are subsidized by U.S. taxpayer dollars. Western civilizations have endured crime waves, terror attacks, sexual assaults, and the displacement of communities. U.S. officials will urge governments to take bold action and defend citizens against the threats posed by mass migration. Can you think of a Western nation in the modern world that isn't being affected by this right now, and where the people are not pushing back? This is a hot topic right now. In the United Kingdom, thousands of girls have been victimized in Rotherham, Oxford, and Newcastle by grooming gangs. They always say grooming gangs, but these are sexual assault and child trafficking gangs involving migrant men, not locals. Many girls were left to suffer unspeakable abuse for years before authorities stepped in. Why is that? Well, because the natives were afraid that they were going to be accused of being racist. And many of those migrants had become public officials. They had joined the police force, and they were participating in this assault. In Sweden is one of the worst examples, also one of the first to really become noticeable. In Sweden, an Eritrean migrant convicted of raping a 16-year-old girl was allowed to remain in the country after a judge ruled that the incident was not an exceptionally serious crime and did not warrant deportation. Can you imagine that? An illegal rapes a child here in America, and an American judge appointed by Obama or Biden or Clinton says that it's not an exceptionally serious crime. No, that's the definition of an exceptionally serious crime. That child's life is ruined now. In Germany, 9 men, several of whom were migrants, were convicted for the gang rape of a 15-year-old girl. A German woman who insulted one of the rapists online was then given a harsher sentence than the perpetrators themselves. The rapists got probation. The woman who mentioned the rapists online, she actually was sent to jail. One post noted that U.S. officials will now scrutinize policies in Western nations that give leniency to migrant crime and human rights abuses, or that create two-tiered systems that prioritize migrants at the expense of their own citizens. The United States supports the sovereignty of our allies and calls on governments to constructively engage with the growing number of citizens concerned about mass migration. The U.S. stands ready to assist our allies in solving the global crisis of mass migration. This is wonderful news. This is such good news. Now, we're going to close it out with Operation Swamp Sweep. President Trump is surging 250 federal agents into New Orleans for immigration enforcement, just as we have in Chicago, in Charlotte, and in a number of other places throughout the country. The incoming mayor allegedly plans to impede feds, but the citizens are very excited about this. So DHS is reportedly preparing to send these agents in. These are going to be centered in Louisiana and in the New Orleans area. The new mayor-elect, Helena Moreno, actually announced on Friday that she was launching a website to help illegal aliens evade ICE. She said, "My first priority is to keep our community safe." It's difficult to say that with a straight face. The reports of due process violations and potential abuses in other cities are concerning. I want our community to be aware and informed of the protections available under law. We must demand accountability and that people's rights are not violated. Well, by the very nature of allowing these illegal aliens to overrun your city, the rights of U.S. citizens are being violated. Let's take a look at this local news report via Fox 8 New Orleans.
Mayor-elect Helena Moreno launches a website meant to advise community members in the face of a federal immigration enforcement operation. Good evening, I'm John Snell. Associated Press sources, and along with McGatto, Associated Press sources say that federal agents, border agents, plan to begin staging in New Orleans today for Operation Swamp Sweep.
As Gabby Killett reports, leaders across the area differ on the deployment of 200.
Stronger now. Thank you for the fact check. He says, or she says, whoever they are, their cans do say bioengineered food ingredients on the products. So the story is not fake news. If you eat Campbell's soup, you are eating bioengineered food ingredients. Yuck.
150 agents expected to start operations in the coming weeks.
I think it is a good thing.
This is an absolutely terrifying time.
Mixed emotions across greater New Orleans, as Associated Press sources say federal agents will descend on the city in coming weeks for a 2-month immigration crackdown that aims to arrest about 5,000 people across southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi.
We're here to support their mission. If they need any kind of assistance, we have relationships with all our federal partners, HSI, ICE, Border Patrol, through different task forces.
We have federal troops coming to our city.
Jacoby0912 over on YouTube also confirms their soup does say bioengineered on them. That's why I never let my kids eat their stuff.
Federal agents, uninvited, unneeded.
There's the supremacy clause of the Constitution, so they don't need to be invited. If you are assisting illegal aliens in breaking federal law, they have every right to step in and take action where local authorities are refusing to do so. So, unfortunately for you, the way you feel about it means absolutely nothing. She's also clearly not the target demographic for people who need to be worried about immigration enforcement. Although, who knows, maybe people who work for her are.
To terrorize community members.
Oh, and Sue Weishar, she is the Policy and Research Fellow at the Jesuit Social Institute. Why am I not surprised she represents the Jesuits?
The same community members who were the workforce that saved New Orleans after Katrina.
The city of Kenner is 30%.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
Hispanic. Its police chief, Keith Conley, supports the sweep and says residents shouldn't be concerned.
I don't think you have to be fearful unless you have something to be fearful about. They have the databases. ICE, Border Patrol, these federal agencies have the databases. They have the ability to determine a person's status, not the local police departments. We don't have those resources.
Meanwhile, New Orleans Mayor-elect Helena Moreno launched a website for the
another white liberal woman.
city's immigrant communities, encouraging people to know their rights. Sue Weishar advocated for immigrants in her role as a policy and research fellow at the Jesuit Social Research Institute for many years. She praises Moreno and points to reports of ICE agents allegedly assaulting people.
I'm just so delighted and if I can say proud, that we have elected a mayor who sees this for what it is, a real test of our democracy and the decency of the American people.
If anybody feels that's in play, if that happens, they should reach out to the FBI, local law enforcement. We all have internal affairs departments.
On Friday, ICE responded to concerns that it may conduct sweeps at schools, saying claims of, quote, ICE at schools is misinformation and that it could otherwise be near schools during routine enforcement. Conley agrees, encouraging the community to be aware of what he calls false claims online.
I tell people to be aware of what they see on social media, some mainstream media. So, I see some reports sometimes that it's not incorrect, but it sensationalizes some different aspects. So I don't think you're getting both sides of the story.
ICE has said that Customs and Border Patrol is leading Operation Swamp Sweep. Border Patrol said today it won't comment on any of its
Operation Swamp Sweep. We are coming to your neighborhood because we're here to arrest the illegals, and I here am in favor of it. That's right. Let me give a couple of final thank yous to our friends over here on Rumble. Hey, would you blow me too? Says a friend of mine who worked at Campbell's told me he found a condom in a soup bar back in the 90s. That is disgusting. Rave Daddy 523 says, you're pronouncing the timber shit wrong like CanCon says Nevada wrong. How do you say it? Tomato, timber shit. What? I don't know. Either way, tomato. It's the same guy. We all know who I'm talking about. All right, you guys. Final thank yous over here. Looks like one more from Sean Joe. Thank you for the cookie. Do appreciate it, you guys. I got to go. I got to take care of Lisa, and she's not feeling well, and I still have to do Baseless Conspiracies tonight at 10:30, so please join me. Otherwise, if I don't see you tonight, I hope to see you tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, good luck and God bless. We'll see you.